Whoever looked at your life and thought there has to be more? Welcome to the Corporate Escapists podcast, where stories change lives. This is a space for bold women rewriting the rules, building businesses with soul, and choosing legacy over likes. If you're ready to be seen, heard, and valued, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I'm your host, Christine Innes, and I'm very, very delighted to have the amazing Shirley joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I had a conversation with you a couple of weeks ago and got really excited about what we're actually going to talk about today as well, because I think, when we're in business, we wear many hats.
Yeah.
And it gets a little bit confusing of like, where do we go? What do I need to do with it? But before I get completely carried away, because I'm so excited to dive into all the conversation today, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you. So, my name is Shirley Sutton. I'm based here in Sydney. I recently started my leadership coaching business called Assembly. So, what Assembly does is really focusing on managers moving into senior leadership roles. And how I really got here is really from my experience having over 20 years in HR. I've worked for many large multinational companies, so I have a strong background in HR and also recruitment. So a lot of the stuff that I do today have really, evolved from my corporate days, which is actually what I do now, helping managers and also especially those, professionals looking to move into their own entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah. What's the biggest myth that people think about leadership?
Well, I think a lot of people, when you say leadership, they just expect you to know everything, or they expect that person to have all the answers. Whereas more likely they don't. Like if you're bringing something up, chances are they're probably, if they're aware of it, great. So they've probably thought about some kind of a solution. But I think people assume that if you're the one leading, is you have all the answers, whereas a lot of it actually, there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of talks and discussions for that leader to also know how to solve a particular issue or a problem.
Mm. Because I think leadership, we talk about the word lead, it's about showing them the direction. And when you're in corporate, it's showing them the direction of like the vision. It's obviously KPIs, a multitude of different sort of aspects of it as well. But like you're saying, they don't have all the answers. But
Mm.
are they the ones then to know where to go and to, I guess, give the confidence back to the people that they're leading as well?
Yeah, so that's actually really good that you jumped straight into that, because that's really where I differentiate what a manager is and what a leader is. Because a leader can, you don't need to have all the answers. However, it's actually being able to navigate how to get to that, how to move your team from A to B. Whereas, a lot of managers, and it comes with experience, is really, is that actually a person just ticking the box of what they need to do? But a leader can really be able, to see that bigger vision, like you're really running it like, it's a bit like when you're running your own business, like you have a vision of where you want it to go and being able to take it there.
Mm.
And for me, a good leader is really able to, workshop it with your team, talk it through, and actually have a good buy-in from your team before you actually come up with a great solution that's going to solve, hopefully, everyone's problem.
Mm, I love it. I mean, obviously, I was in management leadership roles for 20 something years in corporate. And
Mm.
one of the things is I found is that they wanted cookie cutter leaders, whereas I have really learned, I said, especially now, like been in, running my own business, is that to be a good leader, you really need to know who you are as well.
Mm.
So what are your strengths, your weaknesses, and also your communication style, because everybody is absolutely different. And I think if you can step into your authentic self, you can be a much better leader.
Yeah, you're right. And especially big companies, when they appoint a manager or a leader, a lot of companies actually put you in a course or like a leadership course, right? And it's almost like this is, and I think that's part of, the company culture of how they actually go about things. But it's also good to remind yourself when you're leading a team how you actually got there,
Mm,
what makes you different from other leaders that you can actually bring in the table. So it's always good to kind of get someone to, I always remind people to just pause and reflect in terms of what it is actually that you're good at. And then, think about how you want to communicate this with the team. So you touched on the communication style. So I'm really big on letting people know, identify what is your style. And I use the disc for that because it's quite, it's really universally, it's something that's been there for, it's not new.
yeah.
It's something that a lot of people understand. So, which one are you, and what is actually kind of like your learning style? Are you a visual person, audio, kinesthetic? And then, really, so when you're actually talking to someone, especially if you're running a sales team and you want to close the gap of, is it performance or something, and how you communicate, but how do you actually read the other person? So you're really talking the same language. Because if you're someone who likes to talk big picture visuals, all of that, and you're talking to an audio person going, I'm not hearing, am I hearing
Yeah,
this right? Then it's
yeah,
almost, yeah. So a lot of the stuff is actually, when you communicate, even though we're speaking the same language, the same currency of language, it's actually what type of, how are you actually addressing that so it actually sticks to whatever it is that you're trying to portray or you're actually trying to message to that particular team or that person.
yeah, 100%. It's been one of the biggest sort of, I think that was one of the biggest things that I got out of corporate. And I actually even apply it to my business today
Mm.
because, when we're trying to convey a message, we have to think about how does somebody like to consume the information. And I think that is like such a key point, regardless of whether or not you're in leadership, working for somebody, or you run a business. Just thinking about how someone's going to receive the information is super important for them, as well. The other thing I would really love to get your insight in is that there's a lot of people I think that, have, oh, here the company might have seen the potential, but then they have not yet fully realized their own capability of being a leader as well. And is there something that, I know that there's courses, but how can someone develop that confidence to be able to really effectively lead a team?
Yeah, so I really do hone down on that in my career coaching, which, I call it the authority shift. It's almost like the identity shift when you're there. So, someone can see, okay, Christine is really good in this. We're going to promote her, but Christine is kind of still not really, still, you know, probably questioning, can I actually do this? Or,
Mm,
now I'm not just worried about what I have to deliver. I actually have to take the whole team with me now, that I can't just, what if I can't get the best out of that person? And it's almost like really working with that particular manager or leader to accept that new identity. So it goes
mm,
back to, I really bring them back to, for you, what is actually a leader? And let's clearly define this, and actually really angle it with what you need to achieve and how you move this team forward. Because the way you talk will also really change that, because it's no longer I will deliver, like it will be the whole team. And really being able to read and be aware of the
mm.
strengths of the people in your team that can actually, is someone able to present it better? Is someone able to do the research better?
Yeah.
And really able to optimize on not just your strengths, but, that delegation then kicks in,
Yeah.
and I've seen that a lot when someone's recently promoted, but it's almost like that identity, their new identity hasn't caught up to it. Um, and it's such a shift because a lot of the times the person that you're probably managing now was like your lunch buddy, and you're probably there,
Mm.
having jokes about your manager. And now you're the manager leading that, it's like, it's kind of very, it's good that, the relationship is already there,
Yeah.
but it's almost like, you know, um, being able to reach that goal now as a team versus you doing your own
Yes.
objectives and your own KPIs.
Yeah, it's very, I've been in that whole situation, and it is sort of like deer in the headlights, sort of,
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? And then especially when you have to then start giving direction to those people that were your colleagues, and now you're the leader. And I love how you're saying like it is just the way that you communicate. And I'm a really big believer that we should use, we, like you're in it, like regardless of whether or not you're the leader, you're the manager, create it as we, because you are part of it. And just
Mm.
because you're at the front, you should know like their work. You need to understand, maybe some of the hurdles that they're facing on a day-to-day basis as well. So then you can effectively then lead the team even better.
Yeah, and it's so because I always, depending who it is I'm talking to, and then they have that particular issue, um, then they're like, oh, I don't know, shows, I'm a bit weirded out having to say that, it's like that. But, I'm always like, well, if you actually watch, kids sport, for example, I have a teenager, and you see the parents on the sideline trying to coach from the sideline.
Yeah,
And for me, like I always look at that because, yeah, I'm like, this is actually where giving instructions is, it's such an example because you're no longer in the field playing,
yeah,
but you need to be able to, where it makes sense, like whatever it is you're coaching on the side. I mean, you're not meant to be coaching the kids on the side, as you know, but it's very different now when you're actually the coach of that team, is you
yeah,
need to, when to delegate, how to delegate it, because you're also now responsible for their career to further enhance their career in the company.
mm, yeah,
Like you can't just be jumping in and doing the work because you're not actually empowering that person. So it's very similar to when you're watching on the sideline of a kid's sport, is really, for that coach to be really able to give directions of what to do, where to go, having that really clear goal before they actually go, before they start the game. And very similar to leadership is you need to be very clear what it is. If not, everyone will be in the field like a festival, let's just
yeah,
running riot. So it's always, and I always make people visualize that when I'm working with
yeah,
people. Is really, you're now the coach of that team. You can't do it all. And it's being able to accept that new, improved identity that, this is now the new you leading,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I love the word. I love it how you're using identity. It literally has been my keywords this year is like you need to have the identity that matches, your vision, because if you're still stuck in that old, I shouldn't say stuck, but you're still in that old identity piece, you're not going to be able to lead and grow. So yeah, like this is my jam. So I love it so much. But
Yeah.
what about for those who are, you know, who might want to be a leader, but they're just not sure, A, whether or not they might not think that they've got the capabilities of it. But what are some of the things that people could do to be able to, get ready for maybe that transition into a leadership role?
Yeah. So look, I've actually been asked that before, when I was like, let's do a leadership course when I was still, when I was in corporate, and someone quite senior said to me, well, why are you doing all these leadership courses when, there's not enough vacancies? And I actually look at it very differently because leadership is not just about people management. It's not about leading. it's not actually about just having a team, but for me, leadership is actually, you know, that internal shift in you that actually changes. So being able to be confident in the decision that you make. So, for example, if you're someone probably more of a principal or a subject matter expert in your team, then how do you actually get that point across? So your ability to influence whatever it is that you're trying to actually put across, you know, your leadership and your confidence and the influence of what is, you know, if you're a subject matter expert of what it is that you're actually trying to put on the table, does play in.
Yeah.
So not to get it mixed up with people management. So anyone can be a leader in what it is that they do. And it's about how you actually portray that message, right? Like
Mm.
having to actually be able to support your justification and how you carry yourself. You know, it's actually beyond just, you know, um, having to, it's beyond the people management. And I also get them to do, I'm really big on auditing your personal brand, you know, because you know, it goes back to that identity of what is the new identity that you actually want to
Mm.
step into now. Do you want to be a leader in your space? Now, again, not necessarily manager people, but you know, you can also be a leader that you're a thought leader that everyone can see. Because I get that quite a lot. Oh, the team's not big enough to have another leader or a team leader or something. It's like, yeah, but when you're actually going out representing that company or representing your own business, then you're actually a leader in that space.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I literally just did a video on that, the same the same thing this morning because I was just like, this is like I think this is the key thing. It doesn't matter whether or not you're working for yourself or you're working for somebody else. How do you want to be perceived? Like your your image, your personal brand is absolutely key because it's like your resume, that carries you forward. So regardless if you're working for somebody else or as I said, you're working for yourself, that personal brand, being a thought leader, being the expert in your field, and the more that you can learn how you can communicate that. I mean, it's taken me 7 years still to even to articulate properly. Like, it's an ever evolving, process. And I think the more work that you do on yourself, the better equipped that you're going to go, and the better then you can then lead yourself to where you actually want to be as well, and the person that you
Absolutely.
want to be remembered for as well.
I really like that because, you know, how you want to be remembered is not just when you resign from a job, right?
Mm,
Because you know, you really do have an impact when you're working with other
yeah,
people, whether it be
yeah,
reporting to you or not. You know, when you walk out of that room, it's like, how do you actually make that person feel?
yeah,
And a lot of people forget that, you know, like everyone's so busy, you know, I just got to get this through and all of that. And, you know, how we talk, you know, how we communicate. Sometimes it's not just the words, right? They say words is only like 7%, but you know, your tone plays such a big part. So even though you didn't mean it, and sometimes we're in a rush, you
yeah,
know, whatever the tone it is, it could have been intended, well intended. But the moment you walk out of that room, then it's actually, you know, how did you want to leave that particular meeting, you know?
yes,
And it's really about, you know, being a bit more aware and conscious of it because it really feeds into who you are as your person as a brand. And a lot of the stuff as well, Christine, that I do find is when people leave a job and then, you know, I've worked with quite a few clients that transition is who are you actually without the logo behind you? And a lot of people, you know, not so much now, but I remembered, you know, probably 20 years ago when everyone had a landline on their desk and I was in recruitment that time. You know, when you answer your phone, it's always like, hi, it's Christine from, you know,
yeah,
this company, you know? And
yes,
like when you answer it now and you're not working, who is that? You
yes,
know, like it's really,
yeah,
you know, that brand for yourself is, you know, when you go to this networking event, it's like, how do you actually introduce yourself? How do you want to be known for? And that really starts with, you know, today when you leave that room or that call after a meeting is how do you want you to be remembered? And it's really something that I think a lot of us need to be quite conscious about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I am still in contact with quite a few people who I was managing them with it. And I think that, you can obviously, regardless of what role you're in, you can build friendships with it. But, I just love the fact that, now we're really starting to think more how leadership is, and it's not just a title. It is this embodiment of how you can lead a team, how you can bring people together, but also keep the vision alive, like whether it's for your own business or for a company. It's
Mhm.
actually going towards that vision with it, which is so super important, because I think we'd lost that for quite a while, especially in the corporate sort of area.
Yeah, it's interesting because just I think it was last week or the other day, I actually just posted about that. No one's actually going to Google your title.
Yeah.
It can
Yes.
be, they'll Google you as a person or as a brand rather than your title.
Yes, 100%. Well, I love this conversation. I think this is something, everybody, regardless of whether or not you're working in corporate, if you're working for somebody else, or, even if you're thinking of transitioning, into your own business, or you are a business owner, you really do need to think about your leadership style. And as I said, it's more about how you're remembered and as you leave the room, because every conversation makes an absolute difference. So, um, I just want to ask, like, we're going to put the details of how people can reach out to you, but anyone who is watching this now, what would be the one piece of advice that you would love for them to like leave on today?
I think, stop and reflect about what we just discussed. Like, how do you actually want to be remembered?
Mm,
And, and just start doing it. So, not like, oh, but I've been doing this for 30 years, 40 years. Like, I can't change. This is me. Yes, but you can actually still, you can still work towards what type of a leader do you want to be. You know,
mm,
we're still growing, every day
yes.
we are growing. And so is your capacity to adapt and change. So it's never too late. And I always encourage everyone to, yeah, do an audit of, your personal brand and how do you actually want to come up? Like, how do you want people to remember you?
Yeah, I love that so much. So before we go, these are just questions that we ask every single guest on the show. It's a little bit of fun just to sort of get to know you. So I would love to know, do you have a favorite motivational quote?
Oh, um, it's not really, and I can't even, I think I got this from the NLP, which is there's no such thing as failure, just feedback.
I love that so much. I love it. Yes. Yes. What about a book, or, for me, sometimes it's a TV series that I think that everybody should be reading or watching?
Well, I just finished, it's an old one, Doctor Doctor. It's an Australian one. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I think if you watch it overseas, it's called The Heart Guy because he
Yep.
was like a cardiologist. I just finished that. But I also just finished the audiobook. I'm more of an audio book than a book person. Think and Grow by Napoleon Hill.
Oh,
So
yes.
now someone recommended it to me, and I was like, "This is great. How did I not ever pick this up?" But so I'm open to suggestions for my new book
Oh
to
my
read.
goodness. Well, I have 3 copies of Think and Grow Rich. So I have
There's so
already
many
worn out.
versions.
Yeah, I've got the actual original one, and then I do keep one in the car, so when I'm at the beach, like I can like just open it up and read. But I'm just having a look because look, there's so many different ones out there, and I can't remember the actual title. But it was the Jay Shetty. I think it's called Think Like a Monk. And that
I've
has
read that.
been, yeah, that has been an amazing book as well. But honestly, a TV series that I have been just addicted to is the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, because it's a six
Oh,
part documentary. And honestly, it is actually really great for entrepreneurs. If you can watch it, and even if you're not a Taylor Swift, just see how the way that she runs her business. And that she is in the people game. Like the way she treats her, whole team, that for me was, yeah, like I'm like, I want to run my team like Taylor Swift. So
I did see, I think I watched the
yeah,
first two. And
yeah,
yeah, you're right, because you forget sometimes that she is obviously the main
yeah,
star, but it looks like when they do all of this choreography and all of that, that
yeah,
she is a part of a big team,
yeah,
and we obviously ever see her, glittering in the middle of the stage, but really there's so many different stuff that
yeah.
happens around it. It's like, what, 100 dancers or something?
I know it's absolutely amazing. So I would highly recommend everyone to do it. So who is an inspirational person that we should be following?
Oh, well, you've just put me in the celebrity headspace. Um, I don't know. There's many that I'm following, but I think because I'm now in the Netflix, I do follow the Beckhams quite a lot.
Yes.
I do love the fact that, you know, they are they weren't like massive. I mean, there's a lot of PR and all of that stuff, which also comes with a negative PR that goes with it. But I do love that they've built that brand just
Mm,
based on, like they were just two couple that weren't really all that big before. And,
yeah.
Victoria Beckham and how she really pulled her Victoria Beckham brand from her background to
Mm,
how she adapted with her identity and all that shifts. I was just reading an article about her, how successful her makeup was and how much her fashion was losing business.
mm,
But we don't really ever see that, or maybe I just did not read
yeah.
that part. But um, I really do see that because, over the years, it's just really something that the brand just gets stronger and stronger. And, there's obviously a lot of, stuff on the news now with the kids and all of that, but really the two of them
Mm,
they were not from like celebrity
yes.
families,
Yeah.
and just how big the brand is today. And another one that I also follow quite a lot is Richard Branson, because he was also one that we only ever hear the successes of, the Virgin and the Richard Branson and stuff like that. But many years ago, I read his book about how many failed businesses he had,
Yeah.
and then how he spoke to, or now his late wife back then, to actually, mortgage the house to support the business.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
imagine if I had to tell my partner that, he would probably flip. He would be
I
like, "Oh my
know.
God."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love that so much. Yeah, his story is absolutely incredible. Is there somebody that you know that we should be having on the podcast?
Yes, there's many. Let me think. So there is actually one that I did. She's also a coach for, small businesses. I'm not sure if she's based out in Perth. She's been doing it for many years. Kathy, I can share those details with you. There's also probably a lot of great head of HR that I've worked with
Yeah.
that are good, supporters of really that strategy and vision.
Yeah.
Um, and I wish there was probably many more. So I can share, some of those details with
That'd
you,
be
because now I'm
amazing.
kind of looking at, the entrepreneurs and then obviously the ones that have really done a lot of great things in the corporate world. Because a
Yeah.
lot of the people stuff really, we're not, being in HR, like it's not really just there to do the administrative stuff. It's actually there to support. I mean, you've come from that world as well, is really to
Yeah.
support, the progression and really supporting your career in that
Yeah.
organization. And people
100%.
sometimes forget to seek for their help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I look forward to all of that. And thank you again for being on the show and sharing your gifts with us. I so appreciate it. And I just know that we're going to put all the details how people can reach out to you and connect. But yeah, thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was great to meet
Amazing.
you.
Oh, it's been so great. And thank you to all of those who are sitting here watching and listening. I hope you got some amazing key takeaways. Drop them in the comments below. And remember to live life to the fullest every single day. Love and light to you all.